Ben Simmons made a 3-point jump shot this week, but guess what? I still think he's overrated. I will tell you why I think this, and the NBA is considering several changes to its current schedule that could be implemented as soon as the 2021-2022 season. I will discuss my thoughts on all of the possible changes, including a controversial in-season tournament. So sit back, relax, and take a seat. Courtside. Hello there and welcome to episode 38 of Courtside. I am your host, Andrew Cohen. Today is November 23rd, 2019, and this past week, an all-star guard in the Eastern Conference made a 3-point jump shot. Oh wait, yeah, no applause, because this is not impressive at all, unless you're talking about Ben Simmons. My reaction to Simmons making his first career three-pointer? Laughter. I just kept laughing. Because Ben Simmons, his reluctance to shoot jump shots has become a running joke around the league. I find it amazing the amount of people that will say, well, Ben Simmons is one of the best players in the NBA, he just needs to get a jump shot. Well, in today's NBA, a good jump shot is the best skill to have offensively. So how can we talk about Ben Simmons being one of the best players in the league if he never shoots jump shots? Simmons this year has attempted 135 shots total. 127 of those shots, 94%, have come within 9 feet of the basket. And 100 shots, 100 of his 135, 74% have come within 5 feet of the basket. I'm sorry, but in the modern NBA, you need to at least be a threat to shoot the basketball. To make a comparison, Giannis Antetokounmpo, last year's MVP, he looked at himself in the mirror. He looked himself in the mirror and saw that his jump shooting, specifically from three-point land, was probably the biggest weakness in his game. So what does he do? He goes out there, works his butt off to improve his three-point shot. Sure, overall this year, he hasn't been the most efficient three-point shooter, shooting 29% overall. However, he recently had a 6-game stretch where he shot 14 of 33 from beyond the arc, just about 42.4%, and over that span averaged 33.3 points per game, which is greater than his average of 30 points per game, which is still impressive regardless. But long story short, the threat of Giannis shooting a three-pointer changed how defenders played him. If they back off, he's willing to just shoot right over the top of them, but then if he's shooting well, the defenders have to play more up on him, allowing him to just drive to the basket way more easily than normal. Again, just the threat of him shooting changes how players defend him. But because Ben Simmons doesn't shoot, it's easier to defend him. Now let's just look at the stats here. I want to look at three specific stretches of time. Let's start with 2018 regular season compared to 2019 regular season. 2018 averaged 16.9 points per game. It's pretty solid. This year, that's down to 13.8. He also averaged 8.8 boards per game in 2018. This year, down to 6.4. Now the assists are still around 8 assists per game. That's really fine. That's fine. Field goal percentage is the same. However, he takes about 2 fewer shots per game now. And you can say, well, just look at the talent he's playing around. He's always played around. Last year he had Jimmy Butler, and it's been the same roster. Just now he doesn't have Jimmy Butler, and instead he has Al Horford and Josh Richardson. He's always had plenty of guys to give the ball to take shots. Also, though, we've seen these numbers before. Last playoffs, 13.9 points per game, basically the same as this year. 7.1 rebounds per game, basically the same as this year. Also last playoffs, by the way, his assists went from 7.7 down to 6 per game. Not good. His shots per game went from 12.2 to 9.7. He got to the playoffs, had 3 games scoring in single digits, only had 1 game with double-digit assists, and only 1 game with double-digit rebounds, and that was the same game. Game 2 of the first round against the Nets. Not really the most important game. Only scored more than 18 points twice. That's what happened when he got to the playoffs. He shrunk. He was not the same guy. In my opinion, he's not a max contract player as of now. Not a max contract player. Now, a few years ago, about 4 years ago, way before the Courtside podcast, I think it was in middle school at the time. Draft is coming up, and it's a 2-player draft. It's Ben Simmons, Brandon Ingram, and even my naive 8th grade self was saying, the league's going in a direction now where you want to be able to shoot shots. Look at Stephen Curry. Look at Klay Thompson. You want to have elite shooting. You want to at least be able to shoot somewhat. And I said back then, like, in 5 years, I'd rather have Brandon Ingram than Ben Simmons because Brandon Ingram can shoot. He can score. He fits the modern NBA better. Here we are. Okay, 4 years from then. But look at Brandon Ingram's stats this year. 25.6 points per game, 7.5 boards, 4 assists, shooting 52% from the field, shooting 45% from 3. The guy's been unbelievable this year. He is the main reason the Pelicans are the 10th seed in the West and in legitimate playoff spot contention without their number 1 overall pick, Zion Williamson. Again, if you asked me 4 years ago leading into the draft who I'd rather have, I would have said Ingram. Today, I'm saying the same thing. Overall, what Ben Simmons does on a basketball court does not and really has never impressed me. Sure, he has a couple nice passes. He can finish at the basket. But what Brandon Ingram's been doing this year has been special. Ingram, he's shown improvement every year of his NBA career. He's continuing to prove this season. Then you look at Ben Simmons. He's showing signs of decline. He's stubborn. He doesn't want to shoot jump shots at all. Even from just 10 feet. Take a couple shots from 10 to 15 feet once in a while. Maybe you'll spread the floor a little bit more. I just don't think right now, with that stubbornness to shoot the basketball, he's going to get a whole lot better. And that's why I believe Ben Simmons is one of the most overrated players in the league. So the NBA Players Association, and NBA broadcast partners are currently in some serious discussions about some potential changes to the NBA schedule that could be implemented as early as the 2021-2022 season. Seems like a long time from now. It's really just 2 years. So here are reportedly the 4 main changes being discussed. Number 1, shortening the regular season from 82 games to a minimum of 78. So the NBA is only willing to go down to 78. They don't want to go any lower than that. That's that's pretty straightforward. Number 2 would be, once you get to the conference finals, you have those 4 teams. Instead of just having it be the 2 Eastern Conference teams face off, 2 Western Conference teams face off, winner of each of those series plays each other in the finals. Now, in this potential change, they would reseed those 4 teams based on their record. So it would allow for the 2 best teams record-wise, even if they're in the same conference, to play in the NBA Finals. Okay. Maybe. We'll see. We'll talk about that. Number 3 is a postseason play-in tournament where the 7 through 10 seeds in both conferences, there'll be 1 tournament per conference, and 2 of those teams will end up in the playoffs with the last 2 seeds. Again, I'll discuss those specifics a little bit later. And finally would be an in-season tournament with all 30 NBA teams. I'll get into the specifics of that shortly here, but overall, what would happen here is this tournament would take place sometime soon after Thanksgiving. Again, all 30 teams would participate, and the prize would be some sort of compensation for players and coaches for advancing further in the tournament. Now, I'll start off with shortening the season from 82 to 78, potentially. I would have to assume that this will come with some harsher penalties for load management. And I listen, I could talk for a long time about the effect of load management on the NBA. But on a very basic level, the league wants its players to play as much as possible. So if cutting the season down by 4 games ensures that more players will play a higher percentage of games, I'm for it. If it means that Kawhi Leonard will play in 7 more games and other players will also play in more games, right? Superstar players mainly, I'm all here for it. Number 2, I mentioned the reseeding. So again, it will potentially allow for the 2 best teams record-wise, even if they're in the same conference, to play each other in the NBA Finals. And this seems like a little bit of a compromise to me because for the last few years, fans, media members have been clamoring for the NBA to just eliminate the conference format. They already got rid of the division format, but people have been wanting to get rid of the conference format and just make the playoff seeding the top 16 teams in the league record-wise. Now, obviously, this doesn't quite do that, but it is a start. Overall, though, I'm not sure about the effectiveness of this schedule change because I feel like some years this would be very beneficial, even if you just go back 2 years. Right? You had the Rockets and Warriors go 7 games in the Western Conference Finals. Rockets were up 3-2 before James Harden went down. Before Chris Paul went down. And then in the East, you had LeBron James in his last year in Cleveland going up against the Kyrie-less and the Gordon Hayward-less Celtics. The Rockets and Warriors were clearly the 2 best teams out of that group. Far and away the 2 best teams in that group. Yet only one of them would be able to advance to the finals. And then the consensus was basically whichever team won the Western Conference Finals was going to win the finals, because that team was going to be better than the Cavs or Celtics. Didn't matter who they played. So yeah, in this case, this change, this reseeding would work wonders. It'd be amazing to implement, because then you'd have Rockets, Warriors, the 2 best teams in the league in the NBA Finals. That's great. However, if you applied to last season, you would have seen the Raptors-Warriors matchup as a conference finals matchup instead of the NBA Finals. But, I mean, I would say those 2 teams are the best 2 teams in the league. So, wouldn't have worked as well last year. So, overall, I'm a little bit more unsure about this change and this reseeding here because, again, some years it works perfectly, some years it doesn't. It's a case-by-case basis, and you can't just go into the season and say, we'll see how it plays out, and if we want to reseed, we'll reseed. No, you have to stick to one rule. And that's where I'm a little uncertain about this. But I do think what this reseeding idea signals is that the NBA may one day consider more drastic changes to its playoff format, which I'm very, very pleased about. Now, this play-in tournament, I love this idea. I think people have been calling for this for years now. So here's how it works. Basically, the 7th seed in each conference will play the 8th seed, right? They'll host the 8th seed, and the 9th seed will host the 10th seed. The winner of the 7 versus 8 matchup automatically in. The loser of that match will play the winner of the 9 and 10 matchup, and then the winner there will be the 8th seed. Fairly straightforward, right? And that happens in both conferences. Listen, I love one-game playoffs. The games are just way more intriguing, way more interesting. There's a reason that March Madness is called March Madness, and people love it. All those one-game playoffs in such a short period of time. This will also add more intrigue to the end of the season. I think you could potentially have more teams, because more teams will have a chance to make the playoffs, even if it's just into that play-in tournament. Maybe it dissuades some teams from tanking. Maybe it moves them away from tanking and into, let's try to get into the playoffs here, right? I think the format's laid out well. It makes sense. However, there is one small problem with this. It's not really something the NBA can fix overnight, but I mean, this play-in tournament, very similar to the MLB's wildcard system, which is absolutely awesome. I love those matchups, right? 1-game playoffs. You win, you go home. You win or go home. However, in the MLB, there's more intrigue to those matchups because a wildcard team has a realistic shot at winning the title. We saw with the Nationals this year. A few years ago, the Royals got there. They lost to the Giants, but they were a wildcard team and got there. So that's what's great about baseball. That's part of that. But in the NBA, let's not kid ourselves here. A team that wins this play-in tournament is going to have a lot of trouble winning a real playoff series against one of the top 2 teams in their conference. The talent level between that top 2 seed and one of these play-in teams there's going to be a huge discrepancy there. And really, this is just a fundamental problem with basketball, where the winner of a playoff series is almost always going to be the team with more talent and in a lot of cases the best player. So that's tough about it, but overall, I mean, this is a great idea. It adds a lot more intrigue, a lot more fun for the fans. A+. Now that we have this in-season tournament, and this is the one schedule change I'm just not a fan of. If you told me right now that in a week or 2 there's going to be some sort of in-season tournament, I really wouldn't get too excited. I mean, I don't really understand how it works, but basically you start with some regular season matchups that are already predetermined, and then if you win those matchups, you play another team based on, records at the time, and the teams with the 2 best records are going to advance to single elimination and double. It's kind of complicated right now. I don't completely understand it. You can go read it for yourself. But my biggest problem is that I just don't get the point of it. There are really no stakes. And the only prize for winning apparently is, at least as of now, is just extra compensation for players and coaches. as a fan, that I don't really care for that. Right? I want a real reward for the winning team that incentivizes both good and bad teams to try their hardest to win. I mean, that's harder than it sounds coming up with reward like that. But I'm sure like teams at the top of the league, like if that tournament was to happen, the Clippers and the Lakers would lose the first round and just take the break. That's what they would do. That's what good teams will do. They'll lose in the first round intentionally just in order to get some extra rest. And then if you're a bad team and you end up winning the thing, great. It doesn't mean anything. Like, it's not going to change how fans view your team. So as much as the NBA might market this like winning the NBA Finals, winning this tournament will not even come close to that. In fact, it probably won't even come close to winning a playoff series. Yeah, of course I'll watch the games because I like watching NBA basketball. But I don't care if it's regular season or this special tournament or whatever. I'd watch the games because I like watching NBA basketball, not because I'm intrigued by this tournament. So overall, I just don't see the value in the tournament. Whether the league decides to implement it or not, I don't really care either way. But overall, I love that the NBA is not satisfied with their current schedule because what they have now is fine. It works. But I like that they want to get better, want to improve. Again, love the first three ideas. Not a huge fan of the play-in tournament, but we'll see how it plays out. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this edition of Courtside. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you may be listening. Leave a like on YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. Also, go follow the podcast on Twitter. The handle is @thecourtsidepod. The link will be in the description below. Tomorrow, I am going to be pressing the panic button on a few NBA teams, talking about why they need to make moves. Until then, signing off, this is Andrew Cohen. I'll see you next time.